Call the August meeting of the Orono Town Council to order. Roll call shows that Councilor Mitchell, Councilor Wingard, Councilor Gardner are here, Councilor Perry, and Councilor Robinson is joining us by Zoom, and Kerry is going to be joining us as well. First item on the agenda is public hearing. Consideration of a marijuana establishment retail store license for Red Brick and Mortar DBA Firestorm of Orono, operating at 6 Stillwater Avenue, Suite 300. We have some presentation prior to.
Not super formal, but just background for you.
Everyone, Kyle Drexler, town planner. So I was just going to speak to sort of the process that marijuana businesses would go through as they're getting approved. Just kind of recap, since this is the first one. This business is an adult use marijuana retail store in the commercial 1 district. So that was an allowed use, and they went before the planning board to get their site plan approval already. The planning board at that time looks at the land use standards that the council helped to work through the draft ordinance process, and that were voted on as part of the referendum. So that looked at a lot of the design standards, security standards, the odor mitigation, all of those things that we worked through for the ordinance. The planning board reviewed that through that site plan process and approved the project. So now that it comes to approving the license for the business, it's a similar process as a restaurant would go through, where the license section of the ordinance for marijuana businesses requires them to go through inspections, submit their conditional state approvals, the operating plans that they had to submit as part of their state application, and any local approvals that they've gotten to show that they've kind of gone through the proper steps. So that's really what the council is reviewing as part of this license application at this point. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer, but otherwise I think Pat has more to say on the actual inspections themselves.
Thank you, Kyle. Join us, Pat. Sure.
Hi, I'm Patrick Cassidy, Code Enforcement Officer. Staff has completed all inspections and is recommending approval.
Do we have any public with us, Bill?
We do, but I don't have anybody with their hands raised at the moment.
Is Salvador a panelist, Val?
He is currently muted and has his camera off, so you probably don't see his profile picture up there that he's there.
This would normally be a time that you would be open to hearing from the business owner.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
This is when you would
Yep.
normally want to hear from the business
Sure.
owner.
I'm sorry, I'm just not sure how to turn the camera on.
That's okay, but we can hear you now, so you ought to be able to speak to the rest of the meeting.
All right,
So-
hi.
This is an opportunity for us to hear from you, anything that you would like to say about this application.
Yeah, so my name is Salvatore Ferro. I'm here to speak on behalf of Red Brick and Mortar Inc. regarding our application for an adult use marijuana store at 6 Stillwater Avenue. By way of background, I've been involved in the Maine marijuana industry for several years now. For the last 5 years, I've been operating a medical caregiver store called New England Reserve in Old Town. I've had no issues with either the town of Old Town nor the state. Last year, my business partner and I opened the first adult use cultivation grow in Bangor, Lore Cultivation. We also opened the first recreational marijuana store in the Bangor area, Firestorm, located on Outer Hammond Street. Since that time, we've had no issues with either the city of Bangor or the state. Given the town of Orono's referendum on adult use marijuana, we're looking to open an adult use store at 6 Stillwater Avenue, Suite 300, also known as University Plaza. In selecting this location, we have made sure that we are not near any schools, place of worship, or the university. We have also made sure to be in the appropriate zoning district. The proposed store is located in Orono C1 Commercial District, which is also zoned. After searching this location for a few months, we have applied for and obtained permits from the state of Maine and the town of Orono to renovate this location in accordance with the applicable store requirements. To that end, we have received a conditional license from the state of Maine Office of Marijuana Policy for this location, AMS 718. On May 19th, 2021, after a lengthy planning board meeting, the town's planning board approved our application. The approval came after several findings of fact regarding the planning use of this location. On June 24th, 2021, we submitted to the town of Orono's marijuana establishment application and paid the application fee. We are here today for what would be the town approval for our local authorization form. If the town does approve, then this is not the end of the road for us. We must still submit an active application to the state, which will require an on-site inspection of the premises to make sure it complies with all state laws. Can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Salvador? I think so. We still have no public questions, Belle? No public hands up?
We do have one hand up from Dawn Lamb.
Okay.
I will allow her to talk.
Thank you. Dawn, are you there?
She might be having difficulty unmuting. Dawn, if you're on a phone, I believe that *6 will unmute you. Oh, she's gone.
So she's no longer there?
Correct.
You have any indication that she's trying to get back on, I guess?
I don't see anything.
Thank you, though. So we have no other comments or questions from the council, and we don't seem to have any comments from the public. I will close this public hearing and move on to item 3, which is new business. Order approving the marijuana establishment retail store license for Red Brick and Mortar doing business as Firestorm of Orono, 6 Stillwater Avenue, Suite 300. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
Move approval?
And a second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? No discussion. Ready for a vote?
So like internet, real life.
So,
Does anybody have anything to
Do
say?
we need to do this by roll call since we have a,
Yes.
okay? Could you do a roll call for us, please, Nancy?
Yes. Council Gardner? In favor? Council Wingard?
In favor.
Council Perry?
In favor?
Council Mitchell?
Yes.
Council Robertson?
In favor.
Council Grenier?
In favor.
And Councilor Osher is joining us as well.
In favor.
And the vote is 7 in favor and they're none opposed.
Okay. Good luck with your business, Salvador.
Thank you so
And-
much for your time tonight.
He thanked you for your time.
You're very welcome. We have a town manager's report and review of upcoming activity.
So sometimes it's nice to just take a breath, right? I'm finally back in Maine, which is really welcome news after last week. But I have a couple of things I wanted to just talk with you about that are out there. The first, we have gotten some inquiries about Bangor Gas and how long this project is gonna last. Rob and Mitch both have been shepherding the town's kind of acting as the town's liaisons with this work. And what we are hearing is it's 2 to 3 weeks. Rob has been very clear that August 20th, the road has to be completely open and life needs to be back to relatively normal for the main hello to welcome everybody in. We have been enjoying getting out and active in the community a little bit more than we have been with the transition with the pandemic. As I think everybody here has an orono.org address, you are aware that we are watching the public health environment around the variant and have given staff some guidance about how we expect to understand where they've been and making sure that we're keeping things as safe as we can. Our prime concern is being able to maintain stable operations. If we have a whole department go down.
Hey, Sophie,
Yes.
can I ask you to be a little bit more projecting? You're talking just to the people in the room and there's a microphone that you are
Right.
dialing out for.
What I think will also solve it is if Nancy and I swap places.
Beat it, Nancy.
All right. So I would just say we've had questions about public meetings. At this point, we are not in a position to be able to go full remote. So we have to, at minimum, have a hybrid meeting. We have had questions about wearing masks in public meetings. We have not gone to that step, waiting instead for the trend to come up a little bit further in Penobscot County. This is a council meeting, so council could decide among itself the rules that it wanted to have for its meeting. That's not my decision. That's your decision. If I'm not moving fast enough and you want to go to requiring masks for these meetings, you just have to let me know. So that was number 2. Oh, go ahead. Oh, no, okay. Staff has been pretty busy. During the pandemic and in the months that kind of led up to it, we were really loose around allowing businesses to try to find ways to survive. We were not fully enforcing rules. And the reason for that is because we felt like it was an environment where people needed a little bit of flexibility in an effort to try to remain economically solvent. I think in general, the feedback I've gotten is that people have appreciated it and have worked within the boundaries that we established. There are some places though that now that we're getting back to a new normal, some rules cannot be bent. And so we're having to go back now and try to work with some business owners around making sure that, for example, the sidewalk is a great place to put tables and chairs until people want to walk on them. And when it was a pandemic and there weren't as many people out walking, that was one thing. Now we're getting some complaints about that. So you might see or hear that we are cracking down. We're truly just trying to get back to where we were prior to the pandemic, which is trying to be as flexible as we can while meeting the intent of things like the Americans with Disabilities Act and agreements that are currently between town and certain business owners. So we have, Pat has walked downtown a little bit and asked people to change the way they have things set up. I don't know if they'll hear about I think council knows, but I want the world to know that Rob and Belle did an awesome job on submitting the application to Senator King's office for consideration of direct funding request. So that's $1.3 million request for Main Street sidewalks, which is our whole ADA and pedestrian safety project. Would fund the rest of it, so we could not have to phase it out over multiple years. We'd actually be able to get it all done in one fell swoop, which would be really nice. So it's excellent that it is moved forward. I looked at the list of what got moved forward out of Senator King's office, and it is lengthy. So, so we are definitely not feeling like it is a done deal, but rather just very thankful that he and his staff saw the importance of what we were trying to do. And we're still waiting for that. Also talking about money, the state of Maine has received the federal ARPA money, which is the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Those funds will be distributed to all of the municipalities in the state. We are scheduled to get about $1 million for the town of Orono. Those funds come with very, very tight strings and limitations on how those funds can be spent. I have been working with a group of county managers and other municipal managers from across the state and Maine Municipal Association to think about how could we best work together to leverage those funds for some meaningful change. There are things in Orono that we could spend $1 million like very quickly and have it be a worthwhile project. But are there things that we can really make some systemic change if we work with the counties and the state? Could we leverage some of the $30 million that Penobscot County is getting to help Orono residents? So I have reached out to Penobscot County, scheduling a meeting with their new administrator to talk about that. Have a meeting with Maine Municipal Association and the University of Maine next week to talk about how we could also put the University of Maine in that pool of collaborators. I'm kind of excited because for one of the first times we're at a point where it's not just a town saying, I'll do this for me, but rather how can we all work together to maybe solve some big issues that are just have been too big to solve. So the state had applied for an extension to give the towns the money. So it's money that we get, and then we have to report how we spend. And we get 50% of it when we get it, and then 50% of it 12 months after that. The state had applied for an extension because the state is the reporting body to the federal government. So they need to figure out how to distribute it and how we're all going to have to report how we spend the money to the state. And they wanted some time to be able to get those systems in place. My understanding is they can apply for one more extension, which would take them, I think, late September. Personally, I don't know that it's a bad thing that we don't all have the money yet, because it's giving us more opportunity to have conversations back and forth. When we look around, this year was supposed to be a huge construction year for us. We had $2 million of bond money for infrastructure improvements. We are finishing up the end of a multi-year project on College Ave to fix those sidewalks. There's a lot of work. Rob and his crew are very, very busy. Unfortunately, the supply chain and the labor market are not helping us. We've had to push the Mahaney project back a year. So it's been bid, you awarded the bid, And the next, but instead of it being done October of 2021, we had to push it to October of 2022 in order to get bidders. So North Main Avenue, Chapel, College Heights was supposed to be done this summer. They're having a really hard time just getting pipe for the job, so we're waiting. So if I were somebody who had seen all of the effort that went into trying to create the infrastructure plan, fund it with the bond, fund it through this budget cycle, and then I'm not seeing as much pavement down as I would have expected, I might get a little frustrated or have questions. And I just want to make sure you guys understand that we're moving forward. Contracts have all been awarded for this work. It's just going to take some time. The labor shortage is really hurting contractors as well. I was approached by a member of the community who was really interested in trying to mirror some of the American flag, placing of American flags in gateways that you see in other communities, and spoke specifically about our historic kind of area along Main Street. So Rob St. Louis and Mitch have been working. We have, believe it or not, utility poles are 50% owned by Versant and 50% owned by Consolidated, which means you have to work with both of them. And they both have very different rules and procedures, but we're making it through. It's going to cost us about $425 for a one-time administrative fee to Consolidated, but after that, we don't have to pay anything to use the poles. We have to maintain our insurance coverage, which I hope we would maintain anyway. And by the time we're done buying the flags and the hardware for the flags, that's going to cost us about $500, a little bit less than $1,000 total. Rob St. Louis went up and talked with the University of Maine and pitched a joint collaborative effort. So Facilities has agreed that in June of each year before Flag Day, we will put a flag up on every other pole from Ledbetter's to the public safety buildings. That's 15 poles. And they will come down after Veterans Day. University will take care. So I thought that was a really nice way to get a nice project done that people in the community will enjoy. So you should, I don't know if you're going to see that this year or not, because it's taken us a while to navigate the Consolidated person hierarchy. The other issue that I have for council for some discussion, earlier this year, we entered into an agreement with the owner of 173 Kelly Road to repurchase his property that is not his primary residence, it's a rental property. We had asked him to give us the time frame that he needed to be able to repay us. As you recall, I may or may not recall, municipalities have a different kind of foreclosure. It's an automatic foreclosure, so it's not like a mortgage holder. But it gives us primacy when we foreclose. There isn't a big long process we have to go through. However, if we go to sell a property back and we take more than 4 installments of payments, we put ourselves in a mortgage holder position as opposed to a municipal automatic tax position. We want to avoid that at all. So we structured the arrangement. I think we agreed that he had to pay all of the interest, the costs, and the taxes that were owed, which was a little over $16,000. He made an initial payment of a little over $10,000. $11,000. He's got about 5 left. He contacted me before I went on vacation and asked me if the council would allow him, he had the initial payment and then he had to pay the rest by mid-August. He wanted an extension into October. And his rationale was, life happened, things have come up that he hadn't anticipated. He had 3 cars that needed to be repaired and they had big repair bills. Earlier today, I received a text telling me that he has injured his knee and is in the hospital with an injured knee. And my guess is that means he will not be able to work since he has an active job. So all of that is given to you as background for the question of, does council want to entertain an extension of this? And I'm not sure, given the most recent information, that October would be sufficient for what he's looking for.
We would only deal with the actual request, and the request is
October.
for an October
Yep.
extension.
And this continues to not be the primary residence.
This is not the primary residence.
For me, given the fact that the person has made a substantial payment, 2/3 approximately of what was owed, I would be willing personally to give him an October extension. I'm doubtful I'd be willing to go much further, but I think he's certainly shown a good faith effort to take care of the debt and has made a 2/3 payment. And for those reasons, I would personally be willing.
And how long is this payment debt, how long has this debt been incurred? How many years has been?
Or
4 years.
And so each year we renegotiate with this person, or they renegotiate with us? How does this work?
no, the debt incurred for 4 years. We foreclosed on the property right before the pandemic hit. So this past winter, council agreed to enter into this repurchase arrangement to allow purchase and sale arrangement to allow them to buy the property back. So it has been less than a year. We had given him until mid-August to pay the whole amount. I want to say we executed the agreement in March.
But previously it had been a primary residence.
It had
so
been a
we were
primary
treating
residence.
it a little bit different.
How do the councils feel about it? This extension doesn't put us over that 4.
No, especially you're not asking, I mean, you could ask for another down payment if you wanted. That's an option that you would have. You could ask for that and still take the last payment, which would put you at 3, or you could just stay at 2. That's,
I'm satisfied with the extension, given that he's kept in touch with you. That's the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's concerning that he's in the hospital now if he has a job that requires physical mobility, but if the request is October at this point.
Sophie, does he, can he make any kind of payments in September at all? Like anything?
I have not had a lengthy conversation with him, Cheryl, but I can reach out to him.
Is he making any income from the rental? I mean, is he making any rental income?
Yes,
So the house is open. I mean, the house is being rented and the tenants are paying rent.
yes,
And
based
that's
on
income.
conversation with him.
Okay. I think October would be definitely would be the last time, the last extension.
Cheryl is saying that she thinks October would be the last extension.
This, given the fact that it's not a primary residence, it's a rental property, I would have some unusual circumstance, really unusual circumstances going for me. Terry, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, my concern with this will be that we're coming into the next round of tax bills coming out. What does it look like if we're waiting until October? Then you get your next payment's going to be due coming up here pretty soon. I have concern about that, but I think that it would have to be conveyed based on my feelings, that it'd be conveyed that this is it. This is the last time. And like most of you, I agree with it being a rental property. I feel okay with that.
So can you walk us through what happens? We say we've been to try and negotiate with you and we come up with a date where we say, that's it. If you cannot pay at this point, then what happens from the town perspective? Now we own this property, or we own it because we have a lien against it. And then how do we proceed? All the years I've been on council, we've really focused on trying to keep people owning their property, even if they've been challenged by not being able to pay for things. And that's positive, especially when it's their primary residence. So now that it's a rental, I can hear that there might be a change. But so because we're always working to try to keep people and their properties together, I really don't know what the next steps are. Can you tell us those?
Yeah, I will just say this is the only time we've worked with a property owner when it hasn't been a primary residence. So the town already owns it. The town right now has a purchase and sale agreement with the previous owner to repurchase the property. Right now, he, as of August, whatever, he will be in default of the current agreement. I would come back to council at some point with a document that would formally extend the agreement. But if he doesn't pay and he formally defaults, the next step for the town would be to advertise the property for sale and put it out to bid and see who buys it.
Sophie, how does that process affect an existing tenant?
So in my experience, I'm not a lawyer. Don't even try. I don't even try to be one. In my experience, municipalities will sell these properties. It becomes the new owner's responsibility to either work out a new lease if they were looking to be in the rental business, or to go through the process of evicting them. Did I answer your question, Lori?
Yes, but so what you're saying is this person's already in default of an agreement we have with them, and we already own the property. And
So we are.
And I guess so when they're already in default, you came to us saying, how much longer do we allow them to be in default? No.
So we own the property because they failed to pay property taxes, and we followed the process correctly with the municipal tax lien. It foreclosed, we own it, they no longer have an interest in their property. We went back to them or they came to us asking for us to work a deal for them to purchase it. Through the work with staff, we determined that they were no longer living in the property, which made it was a rental, no longer a primary residence. Came back to the council at that point and asked the council if they had, because it had been their primary residence, there was some question about whether or not they may return at some point in time. Did council want to give this individual the opportunity to purchase the property, repurchase the property? They had asked to repurchase it for an amount less than our policy would dictate. Council declined that offer and instead said, if you pay all of the back taxes, interest, and penalties, we will give you until, I think it's August 13th to repurchase the property. I have worked with them through some insurance issues, but they have done a good job, I think, trying to solve those. So the default would come if on August 13th, they did not present us with the rest of the money owed. And at that point, based on the agreement we have, we don't even, it is very explicit in the fact that there is no curing of the default. We can give an opportunity if we wanted to, but there is no requirement that the town give them an opportunity to cure it.
And if we gave them an extension, then that supersedes a default
Yep.
until an October date that we establish if they haven't met the obligation by then.
So,
I guess I have a life experience of giving people another chance and giving people another chance. And I think that, you know, I've always do that because I feel like that's the right way to go. But even that, being that kind of person, I'm ready to just say, let's sell it. And what, if they can't come through on the dates they agreed, and what would be the fair market value, and how would that benefit us as an entity? Because then we'd be done with this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth that doesn't seem to actually get to some resolution.
That's
So,
where I landed when you first presented it. It doesn't seem to be happening. And we had a deal, we extended it as not their primary residence. It should be done. It doesn't feel like a good use of staff time, but it sounded like the majority was going the other way. So I don't feel super strongly about it, but that was my initial take.
And I have to say too, Sophie, that I'm kind of leaning in that direction as well. I mean, if you have 3 cars that you have to repair, you could sell one of them, I guess. You know, I mean, I think that I don't know how much they're worth, but I mean, but I hear Lori too, because I have that kind of a heart. But if we gave an extension, that would have to be it, like the final.
It's not for us to.
I'm sorry, and then
Sorry,
after
sorry.
no more. I mean, but I'm kind of leaning in the direction of, wow, like done a lot already.
Yeah, then also, I mean, they have, as Tom mentioned, they have paid 2/3 of it, and that's not insubstantial. I mean, I also don't feel like going for a property that the town owns, but for which they are collecting income. I don't think that going beyond October is, like, I would consider that like Tom said, there'd have to be some really special circumstances to consider an extension past that point. However,
Wasn't the deal for the middle of April? I mean, middle of August?
so I think that I feel that, you know, they have paid they've shown a lot of good faith by paying 2/3, that's a huge chunk of money. And, you know, life does happen. And, you know, I don't think that an extension is inappropriate. I too would not want to go far beyond that, but.
So I agree with Megan. I think given that he's paid the amount that he has paid, and he's been in regular communication with staff, I mean, I think that's a different situation than somebody trying to dodge it. I'd go to it.
so one of the things that we could do is go until like the beginning of October so that you could put it out to bid at your October council meeting would be one option. So you're not into November at that point. And that gives us the fall to sell it. This would just be my assumption is an outright sealed bid sale. I do want to talk with Roger Huber just to see if this, because of the agreement that we signed with him, he waived all rights to contest the foreclosure. So this might be something we could put for sale sign out front and actually get a fair market value. I don't know. I would have Roger just do a quick look at the encumbrances on the property to see if it's something we would want to entangle ourselves with.
And I also just want to like, yes, I do think in general, we are a town that does kind of like go above and beyond to work with people. And this is a little bit unusual because it's a rental property, but then also we should consider that it is a rental property and we, by selling it, might evict people who are just they're not doing anything wrong. They're paying their rent, they're living in a home, they could be evicted. So it's not just like, okay, well, he has a bunch of cars and he can sell. I mean, that logic speaks to me as well. I understand that, I feel it, but also there is someone in that home and our actions will potentially impact their housing situation in a tight market in the middle of a pandemic. So I would not be uncomfortable considering that.
So do we bring this to a conclusion by a motion?
Yeah, so we don't normally do formal motions, but I don't have a really
Yeah, I
good
think we
sense.
should
So
have a
I think a vote would work to give me some direction.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we take a vote on this. What, I don't, what am I making a motion for?
I think we need a motion to either extend
Oh, okay.
or not extend.
I move that we extend until October, the beginning of October.
Have a second for that? I second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
Just a clarification. So if we do not extend till October, then the present negotiation we have with them, which is till August, stands. And if they're unable to pay, which they've already alerted to us that will be a challenge, then the property remains ours and we can choose our next steps to do with it what we will, but we're no longer waiting for them to pay us. Is that true?
I believe that is correct.
Yes.
Hey, Nancy, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilor Gardner? In favor. Councilor Wingard?
In favor.
Councilor Perry?
In favor.
Councilor Mitchell?
Not in favor.
Councilor Robertson?
Yes, in favor.
And Councilor Grenier?
In favor.
Councilor Ocean?
Not in favor.
Oh, I'm sorry. And the vote is 5 in favor and there are 2 opposed.
Thank you. And you will communicate how strongly you feel about it, I'm sure.
I will most definitely make sure that they are aware that they probably shouldn't be thinking at all about another extension.
Good.
I can do that.
Do you have any other business for us?
I want to talk just briefly about our upcoming, kind of what we've got on the docket upcoming. We haven't had time to really work formally on the council work plan. So our next meeting would be scheduled for Monday, August 30th, a finance and ops meeting with a council workshop is how that was put out there. I would suggest that we could do some council work plan work on a draft. I've met with Kyle because so much of the work plan has to do with the planner. So that would be kind of my idea of kind of a draft time we could work on that. For finance and operations, we have a request from one of the tenants at 19 Mill Street to keep up outdoor seating on town property up year round. So that he has requested to talk to the council about that.
And that would be the same night?
The same night. And I also am going to pass out or distribute chapter 2 of our ordinances. We really need to dig into that because there are places that we're either not following the ordinance, and the question is, do we need to follow the ordinance or do we need to revise the ordinance to follow our current practice? Chapter 2 is administration and deals with how the council impacts itself, works, the functions of council. There have also been questions about what bylaws might look like for council, which the chapter 2 talks about, and whether or not we want to put some council rules into the ordinance. So my thought was to distribute this since we have a few weeks, and at finance and operations, kind of go over it and look at where practice is deviating from either what's in the ordinance or what people really want, how people really want the council to conduct itself. So for example, perennially, we hear about public comment, wanting public comment at the beginning of the ordinance. Well, I don't ever put public comment at the beginning of the ordinance because at the beginning of an agenda, because the ordinance tells me it belongs at the end of the agenda. I think it's kind of time to have that conversation. So that is August 30th. We then have on the 13th a regular council meeting. And my plan would be to execute an agreement with the landowner that we just talked about and put that on the consent for your confirmation, because I can't do that formally. And hopefully, among other things, to deal with the council work plan. We have community development on the 16th. I've got a couple things I want to talk with Terry. Oh, on the 13th, we'll also have the report back from the DEI committee for the group. And the 16th, it's community development committee, and I know I want to talk about town-owned property with the group, but there might be some stuff coming out of the DEI work as well that we would talk with. And then
The 16th is Yom Kippur, and you had said that that was an error, and now you've just mentioned again that we have a meeting on the 16th, so.
no, we don't have a meeting on the 16th. Terry and I will come up with a different.
Sophie, yeah, Sophie mentioned that Sophie and I will be meeting to figure that out. She just said that. So yeah, we'll get together.
The other thing that we want to try to fit in, I'll have a conversation with you, Terry, and then a conversation with Megan about comp plan implementation, because we want to actually hold meetings for both community development and comp plan implementation in September, and we'll have to find dates for that. I think, and then we're back to finance and operations at the end of the month. My big question was just around whether we're really okay for a council workshop so everybody can be here on the 30th, because that just seems like a logical time to work on that. So that's what I have coming up.
Should we just be thinking of holding Monday nights instead of like, if this week switch and is that?
So one of the things, when I first came to Orono, the town council sat in committees 3 Mondays a week, 3 Mondays a month, and had a regular council meeting 1 Monday a week, and a month, sorry, only 1 Monday in a week, so it was definitely. And on the one hand, it worked very well for staff because the committees, every committee met as needed every week. So if we had a project that we were trying to move forward on fairly quickly, we could break it up into smaller bits and work through pretty easily. If I had something come up, I didn't have to wait for a month or put it on the wrong committee to be able to have action We got through this period of time where we started, and we always held Thursdays as kind of our backup night. So there were 2 nights in the week, Mondays and Thursdays. And then we started meeting just about every Thursday. And so it was every Monday and every Thursday. And council, the feedback we got was council was meeting too much. And so Cindy and I went back to the table and to create a more formalized committee structure. And the thought being that everybody would pick 2 committees except for the council chair, who kind of would float. And I think council chair's always been on finance and operations, but not formally on other committees. The idea being that we would have a couple of counselors at each committee, then they would drive that work back to council. My experience is that we have just about every counselor at just about every committee meeting anyway. And
Don't catch me at the community development committee meeting, so
true,
as much as I love Terry,
yeah,
I take that night off.
I'm not going to comp plan.
but I guess my question is if an option might be, not even sure I recommend, but an option might be to move back to that more flexible setting, but only do 2 committee meetings a month and a council meeting. So we're still at 3 meetings. So to still try to only meet 3 times a month, but just come together all as a group and just do it the way we used to do it is an option. And it would give some flexibility.
Sophie, also the environment committee, which has been a little bit more formalized, is also meeting too once a month. So I know it's hard to integrate all of this together, but I'm on 3 committees right now. So so at some point, I think we need to start putting that on the calendar as well. We need to put the environment committee on the calendar, but we're committed to the last Thursday of the month. So I'm not worried about a Monday. I mean, that's been a good time, a good day and time for all of the people that have been working on this committee. So, and I don't know what my point is, to tell you the truth. So I'm just saying.
I think the plan is to get the environment committee in a more public way out there. It's just taking us a little bit of time. We're not able to pivot quite as fast as I would like.
Sophie, I don't think I fully understand the option you were mentioning, not necessarily advocating for, I
Yeah.
understand. So the option that you were mentioning would be, we meet 3 Mondays a month. One of them is our formal monthly council meeting. The other 2 meetings might be community development, or might be finance, or might be comp plan implementation, depending upon what the need is at that time. Is that what you're saying?
So the way we used to do it is we might have multiple meetings on one night. That if I wanted you to look at the solar contract as a finance committee, so it's gone through environment. So I want the finance committee to look at the solar contract, but I also want to talk about a rental ordinance. And I think I also might like, we're ready to move forward on the sign ordinance. When we did that, we still looked at not necessarily everything that was ready to go went on a meeting, but it didn't hold us that on this date, I had to have everything ready for this committee. And if I didn't, I missed it for a month. And so I think staff, I just noticed staff could be more complete, and also council could be more timely when we were at our other section. Now, I also understand one of the reasons we got away from it is because people would come to council And they'd see all the counselors sitting around the table in committee and not understand why council wasn't making council decisions. So that was part of the reason why we wanted to go into a subset. But we see most counselors at most
Yes.
meetings. And even though she doesn't attend the meetings, I know she listens to them because I get questions, so.
Now.
But I can do that in my bathrobe. while we're coffee.
So,
I kind of like the idea of saying every Monday we're gonna meet, or 3 Mondays a month. However, I don't want to come to a 4-hour meeting.
Because, you know, like each one of these committees has so much work that we end up having a 2 or 3 hour meeting just for that committee. So if we're trying to do 2 committees in one night, do I need to bring my sleeping bag and some rations?
so I'm gonna suggest that when staff comes to you with something that is tight, you are able to move through it much faster. I would also say my experience with town council is when I put multiple things on an agenda, oftentimes you can move right through them. And when you do, you often stay at the policy level and on target. So I think it becomes kind of a challenge for me, but I think council would also have to agree that part of the process would need to be having good tight meetings. I can put an agenda together that I think is a 90-minute agenda, and 3.5 hours later, sometimes we're still sitting at the table. So, you know, I think the other piece that we instituted for a while was the idea of knowing when you came in. There was a hard end time, unless it was a budget committee workshop or something that was that you knew in advance.
I think it's helpful to set benchmarks like that. It helps us prioritize our discussions. So if we did go with this option, I would say that, you know, our target end time is whatever it is, and that would help us.
You can always try it out for a quarter.
Yeah, I think trying it out would be a good idea.
See if it works.
Do you want to try it for the rest of this quarter? Want me to lay that out, or do you want?
What,
Starting
Monday
in
says
September?
start September?
Yeah. Yep.
Are you folks okay with that? We're on our Zoom?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm okay to try that out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I understand that Cheryl has meetings on Thursday, but I think, you know, I wasn't in the council when the meetings were all on Monday, but I would prefer, since I have lots of other things going on, if we had one night that was our council night. And so that's not what we have right now. So that's what I think would be great. And I'm sure we'd be able to work through an agenda. And if it turns out that it's getting very long, we also should have the ability to say, we're just not finishing this agenda tonight. We'll have to put it on another agenda so we can have our meetings be a reasonable period of time.
You okay with that, Terry?
Yes, I will swing my schedule a different way to make it work for my trips up here. So I am flexible. So I will work on it.
I'd be good to try it.
All right, so we're gonna meet on August 30th, which is our next
Yep.
meeting. We'll do the work plan and some other things. And then I will be getting out to you. The other thing I'd like to share, Megan has seen it, is my planning document where I plug in for staff where I think agenda topics are gonna fall for you. So I will plug that in, understand that sometimes that changes, that is not written in paint, it's a basically marker. But it will give you kind of a sense of kind of what I think we're gonna be talking about.
And just to go back to what you made here on timing for meetings, school committee years ago, we used to say that their meetings were from 7 to, I can't remember, it was 9 or 9:30, unless unanimous consent to go longer. And that seemed to work pretty well.
So we're at the 5 o'clock.
By that Tom means he's never going to get to understand.
Yeah. So we're at the start time of 5 o'clock is what we had agreed to for this next quarter, 5 to 7. And then how about we just plan to have to check in at 7?
Yeah.
I will kind of work with the chairs also ahead of time. I find like I've done that with all of the chairs at one time or another when I think we have a big meeting to go through the agenda with them and kind of talk about what we're doing. We'll just do that a little bit more. My last, so I will try that. If it doesn't work, we can go back.
Absolutely.
The last thing, can you and Terry just share briefly your public safety project?
Oh, yes. So Lori had a question.
I had something that I wanted to revisit from what Sophie had mentioned before. So after the public safety, we'll do it then.
Okay, so Terry and I were just kind of chatting with the owner of the gym that we attend. He was a firefighter in France, and when he first came to the area, he actually worked for Old Town for a while before he got into coaching and then owning this gym. And we were just kind of talking about how it might be fun to do almost kind of like the Army-Navy game, but like a friendly competition to raise funds for charity between Orono PD and Orono Fire. That would be like some sort of physical, that our gym owner is going to design a workout. That would be a competitive team workout. Winner gets bragging rights, and there'll be charitable donations. And then it could be like, fits in well with our, health and fitness initiative for town staff, and also just some fun morale and, just boosting folks' spirits, and maybe the rest of town staff can get involved, betting on.
We don't bet.
Not betting.
It's against the
Not
ordinance.
betting, but cheering for the team that they would like to see win. And of course, Terry and I would offer ourselves up to compete on a team.
Yeah, I don't think it's offering up. I think that was, they latched
We'll
onto
be
that.
drafted, we'll be
Yeah.
drafted each onto a team. So we're trying to plan this for like end of September, beginning of October sometime. So more to come on that.
Laurie, do you have something you want to add?
Thank you very much for that idea. So you're talking about fundraising for a nonprofit or fund?
Some have like a pet charity that they, so I'm assuming that there would be money that would go to both charities, but we'll sort out the details. But each department has its own kind of special charity.
All right, so you mentioned Army Navy, but you're not talking about that we would compete against some other municipality. You're saying within our municipality, different departments would compete?
Against Orono Police and versus Orono Fire.
Do we know what charities are? Are
Yes.
they their own 501c3 or?
No, so each of the labor unions have a charity of choice. They raise money for them all the time. So for Orono Police Association, it's Special Olympics. And for Local 3106, Local 3106, it's Muscular Dystrophy. So, Muscular Dystrophy
Could we
Association.
have the funds go to something like Orono specific, like whether it's something for the schools or some project around town?
No, I think this was actually just a thing that we created for them to specifically have their choice. If you follow the police department, the chief really does a lot of work. Actually, that's when I first met him, and that's a thing near and dear to his heart, is that, and I don't want to meddle in what they want. This was something that Meg and I kind of came up as a fun activity to do something that's important to them while bringing camaraderie to the group. So personally, I wouldn't want to set what the standards are for them that are participating in a project that's raising funds for them. So I hope you understand that.
So is this something that we would be advertising to the general public that we're doing, or that they're doing, or?
internal town staff event like we used to, I mean, before COVID, we had all kinds of, every quarter, right, Nancy? Like some sort of games or, kind of a fun thing. And it's difficult now, obviously, with the pandemic, but this seems like, we could do an outdoor workout. It would be just a way to, to get a little bit of that back.
So I was sharing this not as the thought that council would plan it. I was sharing it because I was really excited that the effort that the town staff has been making on wellness and specifically public safety, and specifically our public safety team who has really been taking it on the chin in so many different ways over the last year. We're going to have a really positive, fun experience, and that 2 town councilors came up with the idea, I thought was pretty
I'm
awesome.
willing to participate. I think it's great. Okay. Lori, was there another item that you wanted to?
Yeah, at one point, Sophie mentioned putting flags on 15 poles between Ledbetter's and the town offices, I guess along Main Street, for between Flag Day and Veterans Day. And that's 5 months. And what were the flags that were going to go up there for 5 months?
American flag.
American flag.
And would that, that's a long time. And there's protocols for the US flag. We've been keeping them up on the bridge, and now we have a business owner that's keeping them up. But I was under the impression that they're supposed to come down at the end of each day.
Not if they're lit. Not if they're lit, which is why we pick poles that have lights.
So would there then be an option for other flags at other times of the year?
Probably not, Lori, because we're asking the university and their bucket truck to put it up. We're only asking for their effort 2 times. You're not gonna want the flags out in the middle of the winter, because then you run into a whole host of other issues with it, which is why we were doing it the way we were doing it. The other issue you have is, we purposefully, the way this was presented was as the American Flag Gateway project that you see in many other communities. The bridge remains open for people to work with council and for us to work with the university to change over things more frequently. I can't, it would be kind of sad if what we had to say was we can't do flags all the time, so we won't do them at all. But at some point, I'm trying to do a little bit here, and it feels like a little bit turns into a lot with very, very scarce resources.
So what is the American Flag Gateway project?
When you drive through towns throughout the state of Maine, VZ has them, Brownville had them, Milo had them, Corinth had
Hudson
them.
has it.
Hudson has
Has
it. You drive around and especially in their more historic or gateway areas, will put up an abundance of flags. So when you're driving through, you get the visual of driving through this community, usually in a more picturesque part of the community with the flags.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. I do have another item I'd like to bring up. You mentioned that it's up to the council to decide whether they want to wear masks at meetings or require people who come to council meetings to wear masks. And I just want to make sure that we're comfortable with where we are. I know that any individual who wishes to wear a mask can at any time, regardless of whether we have a formal procedure to do it.
Any feelings about that from the group?
Follow the most current CDC guidelines.
That makes sense.
So that would tell us that when we hit red on the CDC chart
In Penobscot County.
in Penobscot
Yeah.
County, then I have to mandate that for all public places in town buildings anyway. So even like down front, everybody would be wearing a mask again. In their own meeting.
Part of the CDC guidance is that people who are not vaccinated should be wearing masks indoors. So when it comes to the question of the public coming, like, I am reasonably comfortable and aware and assured that the people that I'm sitting in the room with have been vaccinated, because otherwise they wouldn't be sitting here with their masks off. However, I am aware that that's not always. There are going to be individuals that I do not know their vaccine status, and it is left up to the honor system. I'm not comfortable with that. So if it were a question of the public, I would be comfortable with the public wearing masks unless they wanted to somehow document their vaccination. But that's what we do over at the pub. Honestly, when people come in, we say, you have to wear your mask when you're not sitting at your table, unless you want to demonstrate that you're vaccinated, but you're not obligated to do that, but just wear a mask when you're not seated. I have a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, so she just turned 7. I'm very concerned about the variants. I'm comfortable being unmasked indoors around people I know are vaccinated. I'm not comfortable being around people I do not know their status. So that would be a hard line for me.
So can I say too that I'm not there tonight because of exposure, and I'm vaccinated, and I was in a masked event where everyone was masked except when they were eating, and I contacted Sophie ahead of time just to see, but I like the idea of just knowing that you've been and I'm not saying I know that I've been exposed. I'm saying that that it's a probable possibility. So it was a funeral, so people were there who weren't vaxxed. Everyone was masked, but it still makes me nervous to be around people. I was there, but I've been taking kind of self-isolating. I think the 4 days is a good stretch. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what's happening these days, but following CDC guidelines, I think, and I think some of the guidelines that you put out this afternoon, Sophie, were totally appropriate, given that we don't really know what's happening, and there are people that aren't vaxxed, that are not vaxxed and not masked, and it's a hard situation to be in. So I don't have a feeling either way, but I know that just to be above board and honest with people, and know that the situation is getting dire, but to keep an eye on CDC guidelines.
For most of our meetings, we don't have issue guidance. So I would assume that we would be able to set up the room in a way that is more safe than chair.
Yeah. I think, Tom, you've been involved in some of the email correspondence back and forth with the planning board, because
Yes.
the planning board met and they were really too close together. You guys are really too close together today. The owl has the ability to reach 18 feet radius. And so we need to think about how we can set this space up to give a little bit more distance, but also, to Tom's point, distance from the public as well.
And I assume that if we had public coming to us, we would post on the doors or somewhere that unvaccinated people must be masked in order to come in.
We can do that.
We meet again August 30th, right?
Yep.
So maybe we just reconfirm via email right before that.
That makes sense.
I'm gonna be watching anyway, because just a few days before, we're gonna have to kind of pull the trigger as to where the meeting is gonna be.
Yeah.
we can't go full remote unless there is some kind of guidance that says you can't have a public meeting. I would argue if the numbers got so small that it wouldn't be a meaningful in-person meeting, that we would be able to go remote. But to all of those points, I'll say the same thing I've said to my staff, which is we don't know what's coming. Could be nothing, could be a lot, and I think the ability to move back and forth. But you're making some really good points, and let's see what we can do.
I mean, I know that personally, like, if I were to show up to a meeting and there was a substantial audience and that honor system, I would probably elect to participate from my laptop in a conference room because I'm just not gonna take the risk being indoors for that long.
Yep.
So I don't know if that actually become a problem if enough people want to be remote, but the governor isn't mandating masks yet or allowing us to meet remotely.
What it might mean is that you have to change your policy to say that the person who's chairing the meeting doesn't necessarily have to be here, and that you have staff here with a couple, you know, the option for people over there, and we're otherwise fully remote.
I guess with this Delta variant and the spike in cases in our state, I'm really concerned for our staff that, you know, in the previous time when there were spiking cases, we had the offices closed. And I guess besides the meetings, how are we going to handle that? The fact that.
Yeah, so I will say, for a variety of reasons, COVID being one of them, safety in municipal buildings being another, the town office is open, but to a very different degree than it used to be. We are not open so the general public can just come in and wander around like they used to. People can come in through an area where we have a couple of people who are behind glass and who are masked when they are waiting on customers. So I think that is a little bit different, Lori, than it has been in the past. Staff, those who are vaccinated, I think, look at it a little bit differently than people who are not vaccinated. But we're taking meetings and keeping social distance and doing the things we used to do. We're just more purposeful about it. Going into full lockdown makes an awful lot of work for an already tapped staff, and I would hold that in reserve for the absolute worst case scenario. It is not easy. I know that there are people out there who think that we've been having a vacation for the last year, but it has been an awful lot of work. And I think we are balancing right now.
I think the memo that you sent to staff, actually that went to all staff.
Yep.
Was excellent. And I think that key, everybody got a copy of that, I assume, on council. I thought that was a very clear, gave some good direction. Hopefully people will follow.
Yes.
Sophie?
Ma'am.
I would also like to point out that while numbers are going up, they are nowhere near where they were when, you know, before the vaccination, when things were spiking. So what we are doing is that we are watching very carefully what the numbers are, what the trends are, what the CDC guidance is, and we are making decisions based on that, rather than just that they're spiking, so therefore we must act. So I, you know, just want to make sure that everybody knew that we were paying attention to what the numbers were and the trends.
So the last thing that I would just say is we're trying to balance this hybrid meeting, and it's going to take us some time before we get it perfect. I don't know if we ever get perfect, but better. One of the things that is important to remember, we're going back to the Google Calendar invites. those Google Calendar invites automatically put a Google Meet on there. We will never meet by Google Meet, never, as a council meeting, maybe an individual staff meeting if that's a preferred method, but never as a full council will we meet by Google Meet. The second is
So
just
will
to
you
rem-
send Zoom links?
So if you let us know that you're not coming to the meeting, we send a panelist invite. If you don't get a panelist invite, you can always get in through the agenda center on the town website. There's an agenda with a link there. So just,
Any other business for us tonight? And I would love to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in Favor? Yeah. Right.
and Laura, and then one thing we did not get to.
Thank you all. Enjoy August. All right.
Meeting with Gina.